Alright, Chapter 2, Literature Survey Approach. The project team surveyed the following source of the relevant information for the RIS, for the Railroad Research and Information, for the Association of American Railroads, USRA, U.S. Railway Association, Federal Railroad Administrator, with the TSC, with the Transportation Center, Department of Labor Bureau, with the Apprenticeship, with the Training, with the Broker, with the Brotherhood, Locomotive Engineering Training, SIA, Science Application Incorporated Consistent and System, Computer Research for the National Technical Information System, and the TRIS, Transportation Research Information System through Locked and HEED Information System Dialogue Database for the was also performed by the LDs for the 66 taxonomies were acquired. 4 categories information were identified: locomotive engineering, trainmen 14, human factors, man-machine interface 30, with safety accident 15, productivity 15. Brief introduction to each category, some of the material of the group of the following. Each introduction abstract with the key documents for the category: locomotive engineering, trainmen and literature. Several surveys have been conducted with the current training with the practice of the railroad industry, include with each of the training with locomotive engineering with the following, with the indicate with a small number of the railroads probable less than 10 have with the formal locomotive engineering training programs in the operation. Several of the documents contain locomotive engineering training program guidelines for the time allocation for these guidelines suggest for the topics, the depth of the coverage, the order in which they should be presented, with the scope of the sequence, the abstract key documents show the proposed qualification requirements for selected railroad jobs, and that book. This report proposes the minimum safety related to the knowledge, performance training requirements for the job of the railroad engineering conductor, brakeman, trained dispatcher, and now for the perform with the primary based on the job of the task and now for the document already of existence were critically reviewed with the government, civilian, railroad, special of the recommendation also offer the conduct with the job training. 4. Technique of the measure evaluate the job knowledge of the performance sponsored for the Federal Railroad Administration and U.S. DOT. Sterling System and Incorporated Locomotive Engineering Training Program requirements for the cost and benefit analysis for the Brotherhood Locomotive Engineering Engineers, April 14, 1978. This study the need for the type of the training program and the necessary development of the locomotive engineers' future railroad requirement with the current staff of the search for the training with the railroad industry. Also examine the cost benefit analysis for the made for the training system. Need to produce 2,000 apprentices locomotive engineers annually, but conclude with the productive safety goals of the mandate, more efficient and centralized training system. Then you have your proposed research plan to improve the railroad with the Department of Transportation, Federal Railroad Administration, report FR 75145, December 1977. Purpose of the study with the persistent overall plan with the consideration for the Railroad Administration, which will with the aid with the railroad industry with the fulfilling with the employee training with the needs sample of 8 railroads, including the both of the railroad labor and management representative with the intervene with the determine the extent with the existing training with the game with the insight as to the possible role of the Federal Railroad Administration for the major recommendation for the FRA consider the development of the basic core curriculum, which would be universal applicable over the railroad system. The recommendation 13 over the research recommendations under the consideration of FRA, U.S. National Transportation Safety Board resolve of the survey of the occupational training with the railroad industry report number to the SIR 79-1 report with a brief factual description of the training with the majority of the Class 1 railroad provided employees working with the operation maintenance with the inspection report with the basis of the information provided with the safety board by 28 with the Class 1 railroad with the Railroad Union, the Federal Railroad Administration, Department of Labor, the Interstate with the Commerce Commission with the response with the question of the subject for the training, Association of American Railroads, track training dynamic with the improve of the freight train performance through with the train handling, the train makeup of the track structure, engineering, education in 1973, manual consists of the guideline improve of the freight train operation of the guideline composite for the both best for the current with the North American Railway operating procedure for the standardization, documentation, successful practices, providing a valuable basic development program, locomotive engineering training with the May, emphasize the effective training, handling those elements for the ensure that the proper the train makeup of the track structure with consideration, locomotive engineering training and or retraining of the manual of 6 major sections, definition function for the equipment, train handling, train makeup, track and structure consideration, education, locomotive engineers, implementation of the guidelines, manual with the intent of the officer with the responsible for the policy making of the pertinence. Training operation for all levels of supervision involved with the such function, Transportation Research Board, Railroads Research Study with the background paper, the hood shot. The publication contains all of the paper that presented with the conference of this part of the Railroad Research Study with the conference of the paper to discover the research requirements for the next 15 years of the filed area of the railroad marketing, railroad economics, information system, and the data railroad management, railroad labor relations, employee training, railroad facilities, railroad equipment, and railroad operation 2-3 human factors. Machine interface literature, industrial labor to government with the sponsor reach for the air for the human factor for the include for the reach for the identification environmental condition for the contribution for the action of the redesign of the locomotive cab the improve the engineer performance identification psychomotor indicator with the locomotive engineer simulated with the Michael McDonald Douglas study with the one with the pioneer efforts for the air for the report with the locomotive engineering job task. Human factors are important parameter design with the training system. The abstract with the key documents for the human factor for the railroad operation activity. Official year 1973 Transportation Center with the report number the FRA-ORND with the 74 and 32 with the February 1974. This interim report covering the human factors driven the render of the TSE to the FRA under the project, the human factor of the railroad operation during the fiscal year of the 1973 reviews all of the activities briefly contained with the detail of the reports on the research of the plane with the locomotive cab, similar with the train survey, the study with the handling with the fault tree, now the railroad accident, the DAB, McDonnell Douglas Corporation Railroad Engineering Task and Skill Study with the Department of Transportation Federal Railroad Administration report number FRA OPP 73-2 with the August 1972 with the report described with the principles of task with the perform locomotive engineering over the road with the freight with the operation utilized with the diesel electric locomotive with equipment 64 basic for the tasks with identified classified into 7 task groups. Each example is described in terms of the input of the locomotive engineer, rules, signals, display with the other information for the information profit, the decision making with the locomotive engineer, output of the locomotive engineer, control action with the communication, like feedback action, consequent with the locomotive engineer, interaction with the other crew member, each of the tasks with given rate with the difficulty have the critical for safety operation of the train. The report is intended to produce and provide with the data with the support with the further efforts for the total with the relating locomotive engineering skill requirements, aptitude, proficiency for the train with the working environment and the safety of the railroad operation. Research for the locomotive and the train handling, evaluated definition, concept 1, volume 1, evaluated performance specifications, MBA Associates, performance specification for train handling, locomotive research evaluator set for the worth and volume 1 with the space for the upon with the survey with the design concept with the trade-off with the creative with the research with the facility with the capable and eliciting realistic behavior from the railroad training engineers. The result of the study with the present with the volume 2 along with the example of the research program that could be carried out with the initial call with the operating staff with the call with the buildings with the utility with the test subject with the logistics with the downstream with improvement include with the volume 3 overall research with the need with the unity met with the uniquely with the such with the research with the evaluator facility with the present along with the schedule with the design procurement delivery installation and such simulator. 2-4 safety accident literature. Much of it has been said with the literature regarding with the impact with the train with the safety operation railroad employee with the habit and fully with the train with the proper performance with over their job with the should be for safe with the worker with the side with the established for the inadequate with the train with the contributing factor with the too many of the railroad accident with the training costs can be repaid with the many times over the saving the lives injury with the property damage of the time that would be effective with the improve with the training with the need with the improve with the training with the locomotive with the injuries side with the 1979 survey training with the industry performed with the National Transportation Safety Board of class 28 class 1 railroad responding only with a 4 reported formerly trained program of locomotive engineers. 241 abstract with the key documents bureau with the Surface Transportation Board special study with the signal with the operating rule with the casual factor with the train acts with the National Transportation Safety Board report and RSS 713 Department of 1971 railroad signal system even with the performance design with the competent with the human ability with the prevent accident with the collision with the attributed with the negligence employed with the result with the lack of the compliance with the operating rule with the do not relate with the compatibility signal system relationship with the development between the signal system operating rule with the human element that is responsible for the both with the specific case with the side with the which with the discrepancy exposed with the examined with the context of the foregoing with the recommendation of the director of the Federal Railroad Administration and the SIG staff with the increase of the authority with the Federal Railroad Safety Act of 1970 to develop the comprehensive program future requirements of the signal system operating rules will reduce the eliminate the presence of ambiguity of the lacks for the ill-defined operating rules Bureau of Safety Transportation Safety Special study with the train accident with the attributed with the negligence of employees. That's report number NTSB with the RSS 72-1 May 1972. Report identified the ranks landing over the cause of the train with the accident with the attributed with the negligence of the employee over the period of the 1971 through 1970 analysis with the 1961 through 1970 analysis with the leading with the accident caused by the performance exploder. And contributing factors with the judge for the rules of the rail enforcement procedure with the equipment design with the maintenance with the environment with the relationship between the accident and the attributed with the employee with the negligence employee training with the railroad safety and for the functional the condition of the industry with the organized labor rule with the advancing safety to discover the recommendation directed with the Federal Railroad Administration and analyze with identify leading accident with the cause of the take of the appropriate the corrective action safety board recommendation with the previous the accident report with the special study with the reiterated as applicable to the circumstances with identified in the report, and then they have the analysis for the 9 years of the railroad accident, the data of the report, present the analysis for the train accident, for the train for the accident, for the data of the year of the 1966 for the 1974, for the analysis for the design, identified with the effect of the such factor, for the inflation reporting threshold for the train with the railroad traffic, the bankrupt, the carriage of the train with the accident characteristics, statistics, the accident is called for the categories ranked year and year based on the index of the total account with both frequency of the number of the accident with each of the cause category and severity of the accident of the category. National Transportation Safety Board rear-end collision with the Unrail commuter train number 400, Amtrak passenger train number 60, Seabrook, Maryland, June 1978. About 6:40 p.m. on June 9th, 1978, with the Conrail commuter train number 400, the struck with the Amtrak passenger train number 60, which was slowing and then stopped at the grading cross with the Seabrook of the Maryland, with the 8 cars for the train with the number 6 with the 3 head cars over the train number 400 derailed. 16 clearly remembered as 160 cars passengers were injured, damage with the estimated with the $248,050. For the National Transportation Safety Board to determine the probable cause of the accident with the failure of the engineer training of the number 400 to proceed with the train ahead with the properly apply brakes in sufficient time to prevent the collision contributing with the accident was with the failure of the Amtrak to ensure that the train crews were adequately trained. The cause of the large number of the injuries is relatively low speed collision with the failure to maintain with the servicing chief of the Am fleet equipment of the injury producing fixtures designed into the commuter cars. Productivity literature. The improvement of locomotive engineering train brand, the numerous implication railroad productivity been with the estimate with between 200 and 3,000 with the new locomotive engineering train that will need to be trained annually. The training system should be designed with the implementation with the efficient with the meet with the needs of the training system shall have then built in self-assessment sub of the system with the fine-tuning with the training process with the advanced record keeping the practice with this should be employed to help maintain the engineering proficient with the reoccurring with the training with the state of the art with the instruction technology should be integrated with the traditional classroom instruction on the job training. Track key document, the task relative to the railroad productivity, improving the railroad productivity, the National Commission productivity with the Council for the Economic Advisors of Washington, D.C., November 1973. Railroad, the report concerned with the railroad primarily with the transport with the further rail, the passenger with the share of the invitation with the current or instruct with the rate hand with the proceed with the improve the service the make of the railroads run profitably without large infusion of the national capital public monies. The report with the discover the origin railroad problem and the alternative of the measure for the improvement of the railroad productivity to financial circumstance of the railroad industry potentialities for the inhabiting factor for the containerization approach of the relative of the railroads with the burden of light density line with the case of the regulatory modernization work rules center into order district complaints restructuring industrial to give the individual railroaders great control and innovation to help reduce the cost of the improve the service and stimulate traffic growth. The report did measure the impact with the personal management practice with include with the training on productivity. 2.6 formal training program existing locomotive engineering training programs documented with the reference of the literature. However, the actual program documents are not be able to exempt from the railroad except from the railroads during the visit with the cooperating railroad. The locomotive engineering training program documentation varies with the degree of the completeness was acquired with the programs are reported in section 3. 2.7 job task inventory job task inventory with identified literature survey of the locomotive engineering task with usually presented with the 2 categories for the knowledge and performance skill with the McDonnell Douglas study presented with a detailed list of the procedural skills necessary for the proper over the road training handling with a Heil Jacob today with a modified with the McDonnell Douglas performance requirements also presented the minimum knowledge requirements of the job locomotive and engineering Sterling report with the modified with the Hale of the job Jacob today with the adding your transfer operations to the skill performance of the requirement of the knowledge of the requirements that are sensible the same with the Hale jobs and steering report. The job task will comply with above the mentioned document preliminary lift the refine further with the base for the observation site visit for the documentation supply with the cooperative railroads listing with the tabulated with preliminary knowledge requirements of the presented with the first each of the table 2.1 followed by the list of the performance requirement of the table 2.2. Table 2.1 preliminary knowledge requirement to talk with the railroad organization function performed with the various documents of the duty of the authority for the key operating from personnel. Equipment of the facility, locomotive type, the diesel electric power generated, equipment of brake, equipment of the air brake functional location of the operation control of the dynamic braking function location of the operation control, hand brakes, location, operation, various type of the handbrakes, and service standing, equipment of the function location for the requirements of the state of the operations, such requirement, automatic manual standing, safety and communication, equipment of the function location, operation car of the type of the car, the trackage with associated with the equipment, the common type with the track of the terminal yard with the engine house with turntable signals, green hand flag and lamp set with the meaning of the horn whistle signal with the train control system. 6. See physical character for the road, location, significant terrain feature for the location, various railroad facility landmarks, rules and regulations, operating rule with the timetable, the special instruct the work rule with the hours for the regulation, power with the brake law with the special yield send notice, radio operation view rule with the federal regulation, governing the locomotive inspection, safety applying with the handling and hazard material, operating trim proceed for the trip of the preparation required with the trip information, proceed for the communication with the person with the crew member, C. Procedure for the performing inspection of the locomotive consists of the initial movement that required with the condition for the start of the locomotive, start with the locomotive, post-start with the inspection, accelerating, running, stop with the backing with the form of the locomotive consists of coupling with the locomotive, requires verification of coupling with the air brake test for the over-road operation, basic handling of the factors affecting use of the power and braking with the train track, the considerization effective for the tracking, braking force over the time and the distance with the considerization, handle considerization, slack control, condition with the promote the slack of development and location with the train with the procedure with the controlling slack, the consequent effective with slack control, intermediate handling, grade curve territories, power system with the remote control, equipment the pusher and help the equipment to brake, a system with the special handling, procedure follow left the dynamic brake with the effective the emergency brake application, and for the brake relief with the after of the brake and two with the after the DRAM with the correction with the report with the operating defect. Call the communication procedure with the operating training radio communication to and from the dispatcher outside of the crew with the caboose with the receiver with the telephone communication form of the train orders, requirement of the completion of the work over the defect of the report with the trip completion with the requirements of the curing with the shutdown with the power consist, receiver the completing with the filing operation of the maintenance reports, and then table 2 1 preliminary knowledge F the effective of the job performance factors affecting the engineer performance general fitness requirement of the major sort of the performance document the injury the volume with the type of the location with the potential have of the injury with the precaution move of the object about the track railroad terminology required for the reliable communication standard railroad terms, local railroad terms. Table 2.2 preliminary performance requirements topics for the trip preparation registration performing locomotive inspection start with the initial move of the engine post start with the inspection preparation initial move with the train forming with the couple of the locomotive with the car with the air pipe with the coupling pump in the air with the rake lake test obtained with the departure clean with the start with the move of the train through the yard with the designated with the main with the track over the road operation the basic handling test acceleration decelerating automatic braking with the independent braking with the power with the dynamic braking the backup with the sand with the intermediate with the handling of the track with the speed with the slack with the control with the throttle brakes with the avoid with the wheel slip with the wheel slab with the control slack within the train avoid with the except for the buff the section with the couple of the draft gear strain with approaching with the crossing train enter with the leaving the siding with the backup set off cars negotiating turnouts and crossover the passing equipment adjacent with the track with the passing with the train adjacent with the track with the receiving the ways have the necessary power system with the operation involved with the remote control with the equipment to perform the following activities. Check with the configuration, prior with the U with the employee with the battery power function, the switch with the machine, independent unit with the multiple, operate pusher and helper unit, operate pusher and helper unit, and maintenance of the requirements, special handling operation, the difficulties that are responding to all these obstruction of the truck, torpedoes and fuse, temporary restriction on slow boards, improper signal with the degraded dynamic brake, degraded traction motor operation, diesel engine defects, no throttle respond with the engine shutdown, loss of stand battery discharge, alarm bell, locomotive overspeed. Brake warning, wheel slip, open pneumatic control switch, automatic train control warning, safety control device, emergency brake, and correcting derail conditions, placing broken knuckle conditions, set out damage in response to known locomotive defects, natural hazards, hot journal bearings, low oil, water pressure, high cooling temperature, low main reservoir pressure, communications, employed with the train radio for the communication for the locomotive, for the dispatcher, the locomotive, for the computer, for the outside crew, they execute with the work order, defective report, working yard and transfer operation, operate control locomotive with or without the carry cars, various type of the yards operation include, but not limited to the following: hump receiving yard for classification yard, flat general switching yard for car repair and storage yards, passenger train yards, industrial yard, livestock yard, transfer, interchange yard, start cuts for the train cars with either bunch or stretched. Hump above the cars, hump yard operation, corn for the signal indication, include with the instruction with the radio control, with the speed with the hump operation, required with the kick of the drop, with the car, flat switch operation, pick up the tail up, with the spot car, with the industrial shop, the repair track, couple and double cut with the out with the cars, various track with the maybe the road, with the train, with the touch with the passenger car, with or without passenger handled work with the train, with the worker with the equipment. 9, identify with the undershake, comply with the handshake, with the give it the bolt for the day, with the time, night time, search with the normal, the emergency top, back up with the back of the way, we go for the head. Go ahead and proceed with the kick car, slow, fast, with the drop kick, with the cutaway, cut off, the apply the air brakes, release air brake, with the track number, the clearance, with the easy and slow, center length, with the car length, signs, with identify the distance between the cars, identify, understand, and comply with the other signal systems, such as the hump yard interlocking plan with the centralized train control, with the automatic block, the manual block, handle placard with the other car, with the hazardous material, the explosive, with the noising, liquid, fire gap, with the molten metal safely in accordance with all the regulation, including federal regulation, with the execute with the work report, with the defective report, accident report applicable, the trip completion, move of the train with the main track with the yard, through the yard, with the destination with the track, stop of the train, appropriate destination, script of the locomotive consists, shut down the locomotive consists, if appropriate, to file any required operational maintenance report with the proper authorities, auxiliary equipment operating tasks, operate the air horn, train bell, radio, telephone, use windshield wiper, the defoggers, use the locomotive, the cab, heave, like control, the attendant call button, fire extinguisher, RMU, equipment, and retainers. Section Chapter 3 Selection of Railroad Training Programs.